I'm going to create two different types of animations, one with the classic tween and another one with the new and improved regular motion tween. So let's create a new document. I've already saved my default settings. I clicked the default option after I set this to 300, 600, 30 frames per second in HTML5 canvas. So if you didn't save yours, what you can do is you can go ahead and go to the web setting and click on here, pop this open and make sure that it's HTML5, then set the size to 300 by 600, 30 frames HTML. Then we're going to go to the advanced settings and it remembers the size, pixel ratio is correct, 300 by 600, 30 frames per second, HTML5, and then click on make default. And what that'll do is next time you create an Adobe Animate file, it'll remember the dimensions and the format type. And it, more importantly, it'll save it or create it as an HTML5 canvas. If you forget to make that change, you're just going to have to start all over again. You can change it, but it's not a perfect operation. Quite frankly, it's just easier to start all over again and make sure that you've got the right format. So we'll go ahead and click on Create. And now we'll go ahead and start our animation here. I'm going to select the rectangle tool. I want my artwork to occur in this frame. You don't have to select it, it would still show up. While the rectangle tool is selected, I can hold the Option or Alt key, click on here, and I'll get the dialog window. It's already set to the size that I want, 100 by 100. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Okay, I'm going to do a Select All, and I'm going to center this both horizontally and vertically. Okay, and now I'm going to go to the Insert drop-down menu, slide down to Create Classic Tween. I'm going to get a warning. It's telling me that it needs to be tween. The timeline has to be set up for a tween. It'll be a classic tween that it sets it up for. And the shape has to be converted. Technically, it's not being converted. What I'm doing is I'm going to take the shape that I created, and here you can still see that in the properties, I still have the shape there underneath. And as soon as I hit OK, the shape in here, if I click on the shape, go to the first frame, and if I click on the shape, you can see that it's no longer a shape. It's still in there. If I double click and go inside the symbol, the graphic symbol, and this is, by the way, called Tween number 1. Right now I'm on the main scene. If I double click and start to drill into this symbol, you can see in here I went inside Tween number 1, and now I can get to the original artwork, the shape that I created. Let's go back to the main scene. Okay, so now I cannot, if I'm on frame 30 here and I don't have a little black dot there, I can't select it from there. And that's, in order for me to be able to select it, I need that to be a keyframe. And a keyframe is what you use to animate. So this one was set at the very beginning. Here I can't select the shape that I'm working with or the graphic symbol. And if I go to this frame over here, now I want to start my animation. And in here, what I want to do is select that keyframe and then do a right click and then do an insert keyframe in here. That's one option. Let me do an undo. The other option is just to do an F6, and that converts that frame into a keyframe. Now both the first frame and frame 30, the last frame, are exactly in the same location. So I can come over here and click on this. I'm holding the shift key down just to have it move straight down. Move that to the bottom, and here's my first animation. So that's it. So it's going to go, and then it's going to stop, or I should say get to the end of the animation and start playing again. So, but before I do a preview of the animation, I'm going to go to my first frame, click on that frame, and I'm going to open up my code snippets. And in here, I still have my Art43F code snippets, and the one I want to work with here is the key line. So if I double click on this, it adds an actions layer that was added there. It adds a layer that includes a stop in here. I don't want it to stop, but it also includes the code that's sent to the browser to put a frame and center my canvas on my screen. So if I do a command return, you'll see that it's centered. It's not animating because it's stopped. And if I come back over here, I can turn this into a comment by doing 2 forward slashes. The other option is to do a command M. That makes it into a comment as well. It's using the /* option. Or I can make the whole thing into a comment. So if I make the whole thing into a comment, the asterisks will allow me to block everything out as one comment. So between the / and the */ everything now is a comment. So this code in here is not going to be used for anything. And now we'll see the animation play up and down. You'll see that the artwork moved over to the left and there's no frame around it. So we'll come back over here and we'll go back to our animation. And we'll go ahead and put this asterisk over here on the other side of the stop. And I need to get rid of this over here. Okay. So now I'm going to do a command return. And now we see the animation coming up and down. Okay, so if I want to see the animation move a little bit higher, let me close this. I can go on the first frame and then just drag this straight up over here, just like that. So there's my animation. Now I want to extend the animation. I want it to look like it's bouncing up and down. And so it's going to get to the bottom, and then I want it to go back to the position of this frame. So here's the easiest way to do this. I'm clicking on the first frame, and then I'm moving away from it, not holding onto it. Now I'm going to hold on to the Option key down, and I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to drag this over to frame 60. And so now the last frame over here and the first frame are exactly in the same location. And now if I run this, we'll see the animation. So it looks like a little Pong game, just bouncing back and forth. The speed is constant. If I want to make it look like it's falling, on the first frame, I have some options in the property over here, and I'm going to change this number. It's going to start off slow, so that's going to be a -100. You can also scroll on the number, so if you click on here and scroll left and right, you can also change the number that way. And so if I double click on or click on the pencil tool, you can see what's going on here. At frame 1, this starts to move to frame 30 over here. This is how close it is to finishing the animation. And you can see that as it moves to frame 5, it moves very slowly towards the 100% complete. And so that means it's just barely starting to move. And in fact, if I come over here and I play this across over here on frame 5, you can see it's just barely starting to move. Not a lot of movement between 1 and 5. And then when I go to 10, 5 and 10, it starts to slowly move a little faster. Between 10 and 15, it's even faster yet. Then finally, when I get to the end of the animation, it's covering all this ground within 5 frames. So it really accelerates. So if we come back over here to the beginning, here's where it begins, and here's where it ends. Just barely moves relative to where it is. And that's what this is doing over here. This in here, the keyframe starts it off at 0. That slows that down. And it's going to look like it's falling. So we'll go ahead and cancel that. So if I do a command return, you'll see that it looks like it starts to fall, but then as soon as it hits the bottom, it returns back to a constant speed. So if we want to make it look like it's bouncing, then the trick is to go to this frame over here. And while that frame is selected, I'm going to come back to my classic ease in and ease out. And this one I want it to go fast, so it's going to be +100. So this one over here is -100. This starts slow and gets faster. And this one over here is going to be on the keyframe. The ease in is going to be 100. So it's going to start fast and then slow down as it gets to the end. So we'll go ahead and do a command return. And now it feels like it's bouncing. So aside from that, you also have the option of making other modifications. So in here on this frame over here, I'm going to click this on my movie clip, and I'm going to change the tint to a different color. I'll just make it green. And you'll see now that it changes colors. It starts at blue, turns to green, and then it turns back to blue. And so if we run the animation, you can modify the color, so it's always changing. The other thing you can do is at that frame, or any other frame for that matter, we can go ahead and rotate it. So we'll grab the free transform tool, and this lets you go just freestyle. And in here you can see that it's going to rotate down and then bounce back up. Now the other option for the rotation in here, let me do an undo on the rotation. I'll just test it to make sure that it's not rotating. Let's see. Oh, still rotating. I think I'm just going to have to rotate it back. See what that does. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the other way of doing a rotation is to go to your transform options. Here's the transform palette. And in here, you have the option to change the scale. So I'm going to make it slightly bigger, 125. My constraint is on, so it's going to both do X and Y scale. It's going to make it slightly larger. Here's my other option for rotation, and here I can do a 180. And so it's going to completely flip this around. So this is going to completely turn around. It's slowly going to get bigger, and then it gets back to the original location. And so here's what the animation looks like. Aside from that, you also have the option of changing its transparency value. So instead of changing the color, I'm going to click on this. And instead of changing the color, I'm going to change the alpha. So it's going to go back to the original color. And the alpha is set to 0 here. So if I crank this over, you can see that it's going to drop in. And just so we can see it a little bit, I'll just go ahead and drop it to 20%. And we'll see what that looks like. So you can see it slowly fading, and then it bounces back up. Okay, so that's the option for a classic tween. We're going to create a brand new layer. And in here, we're going to create another shape. And this one, I'll use the polygon tool. And I'll just hold the shift key here. I'm holding the shift key here, trying to get it constrained to a pentagon. And I'll go ahead and center that as well. And I'll go to my alignment options and center horizontally and vertically. And that should be right in here. So I'm going to turn the eyeball off here so I can double check and make sure that this is the pentagon, number 2. I'm going to lock this so I don't accidentally select it. Okay, so now we're going to start our animation. Right now it's not a symbol. So now I'm going to go to the Insert drop-down menu, and I'm going to slide down to Create a regular motion tween, not a classic, a new and improved motion tween. It's going to give me the same warning. It's telling me that this needs to be converted for a tween. It's going to be the new and improved tween, and it's going to convert it into a symbol as well. But the type of symbol that it's going to create is a movie clip. So now if we look at the timeline, it's not purple, it's green. That's your first clue that something's different about this tween. And if we click on the shape itself, it's now a movie clip. And you can see here the difference between the two. A regular generic graphic has these icons, the trinity of the primary shapes, a triangle, square, and a circle. And the symbol has this kind of a gear with sprockets on it, and it's supposed to be reminiscent of a movie canister or projector with the sprockets that spin through it. So it's a movie clip. That's the idea. Okay, so same as before, we can set up our animation, but there's one nice little option about this one over here that the graphic doesn't have. I can actually click on the frame where I want the animation to occur, and then I can just click and drag that. I'm holding the shift key down, and it automatically adds a keyframe for me. And then if I want to go to the very last keyframe over here, I can click on this again and drag this down here way to the bottom. Now this is going to be covering more distance, and as we scrub this back and forth, you can see what the two are doing. They're moving in front and behind each other Uh, the This one over here, the square, is still doing its thing. Well, let me just turn it on so we can see it. And so it's still going all the way down here to the bottom and fading out and coming back up. And so those are the two animation types that we can work with. Now there's another advantage of working with the regular uh, movie clip, uh, and that is that these paths can be stretched. So if I drag this out over here, you can see when it works its way up, it's going to take a little turn. And now over here, this is the return back to the bottom. If I grab this and I drag this over here, you can see that it's going to come down off to the side. And so you can mix the two types of animations. You can have different types of symbols and different types of animations. They're both interchangeable. And you can even swap out the symbol for another one. So here's one nice thing about the new and improved movie clip. And I'm going to hide the bottom one so we just look at the pentagon. I can actually click on this guy over here, and then I have these swap options. So this is currently symbol, this one in here, if we look at it, that's symbol number 1. The other one is called Tween 1. Whoops, get that back in the center. The other one's called Tween 1. So I can actually change this all at one time. I can come over here and click on the symbol, and then over here this is a swap option. So if I click over here, I can go ahead and swap that out, and I'll hit OK, and it swaps out my animation, so I'm no longer animating with the pentagon. I'm animating with the square. And now the reason why the square isn't lining up quite right is because they have a different center. But it's still doing the same thing. It's just lining up to a different center. The problem with this guy in here is that it's harder to do the ease in and ease out. This one was fairly easy. But this one in here, even though you do get the one ease option when you click on the frame in here, you do see the ease, and we can go ahead and slow this down. We'll make it a negative number. But the problem is that if I try to do it over here, it changes it in both places. See how that is negative 100? If I try to make that a positive, it's going to be a positive over here as well. So it changes it throughout the whole animation as I'm moving my way through the keyframes. So it takes a little bit more effort to sort that out, but here's what the animation looks like. So it's still following that path relative to the center of the object. Okay, so those are the standard ways of working with the standard movie clip animation and the classic graphic animation. And the two, you can mix them up or do whatever you want. Now, right now, the way this is set up is both of them have to be on their own separate layers. They're animating directly on the main timeline. And the last thing I want to do is I want to add a stop at the end of the animation so that the animation just plays through. I think what I'll do is I'll put this one back. I'm going to switch it back to the pentagon. We'll go ahead and hit OK. That way it looks closer to what I wanted. Okay, so I want to add a stop at the end of the animation so it just comes to a dead stop. I'm going to click on the actions layer over here, click on the last frame, and I'm going to open up my code snippets again. And in here in HTML5, there's an option for timeline, and there's a stop at this frame. So if I double click on this, it's going to add a stop in there along with some additional instructional information. So there it is. So this is a stop by itself. Here's the instruction information. So I'll just get rid of that extra return. I don't need to read the instructions. It does what I just showed you. It adds the stop to it. Notice that this stop on this frame over here is the same as this stop over here, except this one is turned off. We made that into a comment. So this is where it's going to stop. So the animation is only going to run one time. And here's what it looks like. And if you want to see it again, you do a reload. You can see what the animation is doing. Okay, so in the next two movies, I'm going to show you how to bring in artwork from Adobe Illustrator. And we're also going to do an animation within a graphic symbol. So it's going to be a little bit more complicated. But if you see the steps, you'll figure it out. And once you've done it a couple of times, it'll be like easy peasy. Okay, we'll catch you in the next movie.